Right, so moving up to your hips. Now obviously we spent 30 seconds on the left ankle, 30 seconds on the right ankle in one of those two positions we went through. This is now opening up your hip joints and opening up your lower back, so you'll be able to start to move a bit more efficiently through the hips and back. Now in a 4-point kneeling position, Liam's on his knuckles, but you can go onto the wrists. I'd imagine is that uncomfortable for you to go into that position?
I do it on my knuckle just because I've got a bit of calcification on my wrist bones there. So when I'm like that, it's like pushing back on it. So
got you. So these are the problems of somebody that's been in the sport for as long as you have. Calcification, degenerative changes, things to look forward to when you get a bit older. So this is a frog stretch, but this is a mobilising frog stretch. You could hold this, if this was post-workout, you could sit back into this stretch and that will just give you a nice release for the hips and the back. Because we're about to go into a session and we don't want to statically stretch before we go into the session, because static stretching reduces power and it reduces strength, which is not a good thing before you start sparring and before you start doing pads, we're going to oscillate in and out of these positions. So what you're going to do, Liam, if you look at Liam's feet, they're turned out, so he's in an externally rotated position, so the insides of his feet are on the floor, and you're going to rock backwards. So rock yourself back over your heels, try and take yourself as far back as you feel comfortable, and then rock forwards. So we're holding the stretch, which is when you've rocked back, so go back into your rock. So that's the stretch position. Come forwards, that's the release position. And we're just going to rock forwards and backwards 10 or 15 times. Each time you rock backwards, you should find that your hips open up and loosen off, and you can actually take yourself slightly further into the stretch. So the ideal scenario would be, by the time you finish your 10 or 12 reps on this, your bum is almost touching the back of the heels. That's kind of where we want to be in terms of mobility. Now if you notice in Liam's knees, he's got his knees separated, so they're slightly wider than hip width apart. You can play around with this, so don't feel kind of obliged to follow the same procedure. Play around with your foot position, play around with your knee width apart, and find a position that works best for you. All of our pelvises are different, all of the femur lengths are different. So, when somebody tells you that one size fits all, it definitely isn't the case in terms of your own physiology. So play around with your knee position and your foot position, find a position that works best. 10 or 12 reps in this position. This is pre-workout. If you're going to do it as a post-workout exercise, you'd simply just sit back into the stretch and you camp out there for 30 to 60 seconds. But we wouldn't want to do this before we fight, before we spar, because it's going to reduce strength and power.